As much as I love it, I have a lot of problems with the Nintendo Switch, the most prevalent of which being the lack of really any legacy content on the system besides the obvious NES and SNES online service. I'm talking N64, I'm talking Game Boy Advance, I'm talking Nintendo DS, or maybe even Gamecube. I want to be able to play these games on the Switch. Nintendo, I'm willing to give you my money, why won't you let it happen? It's been such a weird situation too. This feels like the best console for Nintendo to do a virtual console on. However, they opted to go with the subscription route and tie it into their Nintendo Switch online service, and well, that hasn't really gone too well for us just yet, because while we have gotten the addition of SNES Online, the NES and SNES are obviously good, but not necessarily the games I want to be playing. However, I've been crafting up a nice theory. This is an idea I've had in my head for a while, like, oh, this would be cool if Nintendo did this. And then as the pieces have been falling into place over the past couple of months, culminating in this huge Nintendo Switch update just the other day, it's gotten to a point where I feel like I have to make a video about this, because this theory could very well become a reality. What's going on, guys? It's Thomas from the Switch Stop, and in this video I want to talk about the truth behind Nintendo Switch Online and this crazy theory I have about how we'll be able to play a bunch of Nintendo's legacy content, including GameCube games, N64 games, Game Boy Advance games, on our Nintendo Switches a lot sooner than you guys might think. In this theory video, I'm gonna hit you guys with the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, except not actually the who and the where, because that's just Nintendo and on our Switch, so we'll throw those away, but the other ones I really do want to answer in this video. But before we hop in, once again, this is a theory, so if you go underneath the video and comment, this isn't happening yet, your brain might not be working at this time. Also, check and see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, it's free, it helps out the channel, and if you enjoy the content, it's the best way to get notified. With that out of the way, I want to talk about birthdays, specifically for Mario and Fire Emblem. If you're subscribed to the channel, you might have heard of a game called Super Mario 3D All-Stars. I did 1 or 2 videos on it. Basically, that game came out in the middle of September, and for some weird reason, it's not going to be sold anymore after March 31st, 2021. Not 2020, that wouldn't make sense. Now, obviously, I'm assuming most of you guys knew that, but what you guys might not have actually known if you're not a Fire Emblem fan is that the original Fire Emblem actually got a re-release translated for the first time on the Switch this month. Nintendo's gonna stop selling it on March 31st, 2021, which is really weird if you think about it. I mean, for Super Mario 35th anniversary, you know, Mario 3D All-Stars, I was thinking, hey, Nintendo's probably gonna stop selling this game to try and drive up the price of those, you know, retail copies. They're gonna try and make everyone try and snag a physical copy and just make a ton of money. But with the Fire Emblem one, that doesn't even make sense, because they're only selling the game digitally, so why would they even limit the sales? That it doesn't make sense. On top of that, with Fire Emblem, it's one of those games where, like, you know, you're kind of already in the series or you're not. If you're going to get into the series, you're not going to be buying the $5 NES game, you're going to be buying Fire Emblem Three Houses. So it doesn't really make sense to restrict the sales of this game, whereas you can kind of justify it for Mario 3D All-Stars, saying, hey, Nintendo's just greedy. It doesn't even really make sense from a financial standpoint at all for Fire Emblem. So I had no idea why this was, you know, when they announced this. I was like, what is going on March 31st or after March 31st that they don't want these games being sold for? And just like that, we already have the when of our questions answered. This mythical service, which I'll get into in a bit, is going to be launching sometime after March 31st, 2021. They're doing that so that they can essentially be selling you these games and then just include them in a, you know, paid service later on. Initially, when I thought of this idea, I was like, there's no way Nintendo does this. That's just too scummy. But then if you think about it, I mean, is it though? Is it though? Is it though? Is it though? Oh boy. I suppose it's high time we jump into the what, as in, what is this service? Well, it's essentially a hybrid between the past Virtual Console and the current system they have going on right now. I think it's still going to be built into the Nintendo Switch Online service, but unfortunately, you're not going to be getting GameCube games included. Instead, what I think they're going to do is slowly roll out more services, such as Game Boy Online, or Game Boy Advance Online, or Nintendo 64 Online. These services will be just like NES and SNES Online, as in, you know, you get a set amount of games and you can play them whenever. They're a subscription-based service. They're a little app on your home screen. It works perfectly fine. However, then for the more modern-ish titles, I think they're going to go with some sort of like virtual console program where you can actually buy these older games. I'm talking GameCube, DS, maybe even Wii. You'll be able to buy these titles and they'll show up in their own respective apps. So for example, look at this little GameCube Nintendo Switch Online mock-up I made. Obviously when I made this, I'm like, they're not gonna give us all these GameCube games, but what if they were all like locked or something and then you could buy them each individually? That makes a lot more sense with what we know of Nintendo today. Obviously I saved this till the end because it's the most important part. why do I even think this in the first place? I mean, right now it's a cool idea, but it's little more than that, an idea. Well, first of all, you already have the 2 games that are going to be stopped sold on March 31st. That's already suspicious. It just doesn't make sense from a business standpoint. On top of various credible leakers saying stuff like Game Boy Online would be coming relatively soon, we have Super Mario 3D All-Stars, in which there were literal files found for games that they were testing on the emulators they built to emulate, obviously, 64, Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario Galaxy. They were testing other games on those emulators to see if they could run on Switch. The only reason it makes sense for them to want to see if these games work on Switch is if they were going to include them in some way with Nintendo Switch Online. On top of that, there was this giant Switch firmware update recently which added in this big Nintendo Switch Online button. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I was super hyped when I saw this. I mean, Nintendo finally did some sort of Switch update. Like, they had never done this in the past 3 years the Switch was on, and the update, well, there really wasn't much in this button. However, what I want to focus on is this little NES plus SNES Online, like, little panel here. When I clicked on this, I was like, oh, sweet, are all my, classic games now organized to this one button? Well, unfortunately, right now, no, they're not. But I think that is where Nintendo is going with this. Why do I think this? Well, it makes sense. If you go to, like, the Save Data Cloud section of Nintendo Switch Online thing, it lets you access your save data for certain apps. If you go to the special offers section, it allows you to buy special offers. If you go to the NES plus Super NES section, it allows you to look at classic games. That doesn't really make sense. This section is completely pointless. However, despite that, it allows you to sort games by console. Why would you allow people to sort games by consoles when there's only 2 consoles? That seems kind of pointless, unless they were future-proofing the app for when they add in future consoles. I wonder. Also, they added in a freaking timeline showing when all these games came out. How awkward is it to have a timeline ending in 1997? Like, this has to be a joke. There's no way they add in this massive timeline and then only fill it up to 1997. It looks like sad and pathetic. Like, why? On top of that, there's the small stuff, like the fact that both of these services haven't gotten new games since September. Reminder, we're in December now, and it's the most busy time of the year for Nintendo. You feel like if they just launched this giant Switch Online update, putting an icon on the home screen for the first time in the Switch's career, obviously trying to push subscriptions to Switch Online, you'd think maybe they would update the 2 flagship services with new games. No, they haven't done that in like 3 months now. We're also at 70 NES games. Like, there aren't really many more NES games they can add that are of high quality at all. They're already scraping the bottom of the barrel with that. Absolutely everything, from Nintendo halting sales to some of their older, more classic titles for no apparent reason whatsoever, to Nintendo adding in this massive new update for Switch, the biggest one in the Switch's history, with this library of their own classic games complete with a timeline and the ability to sort between consoles, currently only having 2 consoles and the timeline only going up to 1997, plus the fact that they didn't add a new console into the service this year, to some small stuff like both the NES and SNES apps being updated to version 5.0 and 2.0 respectively, to Nintendo testing out N64, Gamecube, and Wii emulation on the Switch via the Super Mario 3D All-Stars pack. You cannot tell me that it doesn't feel like Nintendo is gearing up to do something pretty big here with Switch Online and their legacy content. And with that, we've answered all the questions but one. Why would Nintendo do? Yep, that about sums it up. If you made it this far in the video, you have to subscribe. Nah, it would help a lot though. I'm trying to hit 100K before I graduate high school this June, so I mean, if you want to help me out, that's been a personal goal of mine ever since starting the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Thomas from the Switch Stop signing off. Peace.